I'm Steve Loomis with Walking That Mile. Man, in Minnesota, everywhere you turn, you're finding fraud. You really are. I looked up the last 6 years approximately for major fraud cases through public services, state programs, and I'm going to list them off here. It's just incredible. The last six, just this is just over the last 6 years. So SNAP, which is like food stamps, through the USDA, $4.2 million in fraud. Really unknown how many people are involved in that. Unemployment benefits fraud, DEED, $13 million in fraud. Again, unknown really how many people are involved. Autism therapy, DHS, $14 million in fraud, at least one involved. Of course, there's going to be more coming out probably. Evergreen Recovery Drug Rehab, $30 million in fraud, 3 people at least involved. Frontline worker fraud, labor fraud, $45.5 million. Thousands of people, they estimate, were involved in that one. New Alliance, or New Way Alliance, NUWAY Alliance, drug rehab through DHS, $58 million in fraud. Unknown people involved. Unknown number of people involved. Child Care Assistance, DHS, $100 million in fraud, 62 plus investigations. Housing Stabilization Services, $100 million in fraud, 8 plus people involved. And they talk to people like for this housing stabilization, people coming out of maybe rehab or maybe they're incarcerated or something like that. And they're funneled to this program, housing stabilization, and if you look it up, you see on the news, these people are calling, and they're basically told, "Oh, find your own housing," but then the people that they called would bill that as, we've helped, and then they would take their payment. $100 million again in fraud, 8 plus people involved. Medicare fraud, DHS again, $189 million in fraud, hundreds involved. Child nutrition program, you've heard of this one. This is the Feeding Our Future, the big one. $250 million in fraud. 75 people have been charged or indicted in that case. $250 million in just, they claim that they were serving millions of meals to kids, especially around the pandemic there. Besides that, okay, so you've got just major failures for many years at the state level here. We're talking Governor Walz. I mean, Governor Walz is to blame. The buck stops with him. He's been governor for the entire time. We're talking close to $1 billion in fraud, and probably more than that when we if we actually got a real count of how much went out the door. This estimate of the numbers that I just rattled off was like $804 million. Again, this is just what I looked up for the past 6 years. Okay, they just came out with the Operation Twin Shield immigration fraud case. Again, not a lot of financial fraud there that I know of right now, but it's immigration fraud, as in getting people into Minnesota illegally. And then, of course, we have Minnesota Care. Minnesota Care was expanded or voted on to be expanded back in 2023. It didn't actually go into effect until the first quarter of 2025. The estimate, this was for illegal immigrants, okay? Minnesota Care, health care, we're going to fund, come on to Minnesota, of course, we got free health care for you. It was supposed to be, I think, about $5 million. They estimated per year. The first quarter, I guess, of 2025 was $3.3 million. And then the whole program only lasted for 5 months before they shut it down. And it was $7 to $10 million that they had already spent because they underestimated how many illegal immigrants were actually here and how many were going to show up and take the free health care. And then since like 2013, we've had free in-state tuition for illegal immigrants. Free in-state tuition. They call it the DREAM Act. They said it costs about $539,000 annually for that. But they claim that there's actually a revenue gain because of people increase enrollment for that. On top of that, and I did a video about this a few months ago that didn't really take off, but that Feeding Our Future was a special one as far as the details that we know about. Ilhan Omar and Keith Ellison were connected to Feeding Our Future. There's no evidence right now to know that they got any sort of direct payments from them, although Keith Ellison had some campaign contributions from a couple of the people who then were later charged. I think he gave them back. He and his son, Jeremiah, who was on the Minneapolis City Council and now is at Harvard and still taking his pay apparently from the city of Minneapolis. He's not running again, but he'll receive the rest of his pay because that's how we roll here in Minnesota. But he received some campaign contributions as well from a couple of these people, and I'll link that video here. It's pretty interesting. The American Alliance, let me pause and pull it up. That's it. It's the Center for the American Experiment. They obtained and posted the secret recording that was made of Keith Ellison talking to some of the people involved in the Feeding Our Future fraud. And he's recorded in there talking to the people were complaining that they were being investigated because they were committing fraud. And early on, they were, I guess there were some red flags that were starting to be noticed. And so they complained to Keith Ellison, and Keith Ellison said, "Oh, we will absolutely take care of that. You're being targeted, of course, because you're black, because a majority, maybe all of this fraud has been conducted by Somali immigrants. I mean, it is what it is. All of the 75 people charged with the $250 million fraud in the Feeding Our Future, all of them, I believe, were Somali descent, except one. Kind of the ringleader was a white female. Everybody else was Somali. They were Somali restaurants that were claiming to provide all these meals to kids, and they came to Keith Ellison and said, "Hey, they're looking into us and complaining, and it's obviously because you're black, obviously because you're immigrant, and we'll stop that." Keith is on tape saying, "Yeah, we'll absolutely stop them from investigating you because they're of course doing it because you're black." So I did do a video on that. And my point of all of this is Governor Tim Walz, for some reason, thinks even with all of this failure, not to mention 2020, George Floyd, letting the city burn down, just failure after failure, the Annunciation shooting, the church, they came to him and said, "We need money for a security guard. We are receiving threats." And they begged him for money. And this was back when Minnesota had a $17 or $18 billion surplus. And they got nothing from him. No response, crickets. Crickets from Governor Walz. Nothing. The shooting happened. Tragedy. Terrible. I can't imagine having kids there. My heart goes out to them. What a terrible day. And now, of course, they're trying to take our guns. And Governor Walz is a part of that. Well, now we need a special session to take your guns. You had the opportunity to provide security for places like Annunciation School, private school. Tim Walz hates private schools. He refused. He just flat refused. Of course, they spend money on everything else, transgender, illegal immigrants, but a private Catholic school requests some money for security because they were receiving threats. They said, we are receiving more and more threats, and we really fear that we need security here. Nothing. He did nothing, and we had an $18 billion surplus at that time. Of course, they pissed all of that money away. Now we're looking at a $5 billion deficit in the next couple of years. And for some reason, he thinks that he's going to win a third term. And I say, this is our chance. Look at the failure. It sucks. I love Minnesota. I love the people of Minnesota, born and raised here. But this is our time to keep talking about the failures of this administration, Governor Walz, Keith Ellison, just terrible failure, and we need to push to get this guy out. We need somebody new. And now's the time. Now's the time. I can't imagine with all of this that people would actually vote him in. But you never know. It's Minnesota. We haven't had a Republican in 30 years or something like that. So anyway, that's where we're at. Drowning in fraud. We are drowning in fraud. Everywhere you look. I mean, every time I pull up my phone, I get new news about some new fraud investigation in the state of Minnesota. So that's it. If you can, I would really appreciate subscribing. Hit the like button. Let's get this word out there. We need new leadership in Minnesota. Steve Loomis with Walking That Mile.